2 and 1.
And good morning
You
to
are now
everybody.
live.
And good morning to everybody, and welcome to today's remote meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. It's Wednesday, the 3rd of August, 2022. So my first task is to elect a chairman. So may I have a nomination for chairman of subcommittee, please?
Yeah, nominate yourself, Councillor Butt.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kelsey. And may I have a seconder, please?
I'd like to second you.
Thank you, Councillor Farr. So elected, I will then take the meeting. So firstly, we'll move then to our clerk. And if I ask Mrs. Cutler, please, could you take us through housekeeping? Thank you.
Good morning. Please note that this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited to by the chairman. State your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. Please ensure that you unmute yourself and always turn on the video function before speaking. Please mute your microphone when you are not talking. After each party has made their representation, the chairman will ask each person in turn if they have any questions or comments. However, if at any point you would like to speak again, please use the raise your hand function at the top right of the screen. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum, and can everyone ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Cutler. So now I will ask with regard to our members here today, any declarations of interest. We have no apologies. Councillor Kelsey, any declarations of interest?
No, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Farr?
No, none from me.
Thank you. And for completeness, I have no declarations of interest either. We now move to the protocol for public speaking, which is agenda item 4. This has been included and circulated with the agenda sheet for your reference. So moving to item 4, which is, no, item 5, I do beg your pardon, which is the late night store 692 Christchurch Road, Bournemouth, BH7 6BY. This item has been withdrawn as the police have withdrawn their representation following mediation, and therefore a hearing is no longer required. So moving on to item 6, which is substantive, which is Maxi Market 673 to 675 Christchurch Road, Bournemouth. An application for new premises has been received for the premises known as Mini Market 673 to 675 Christchurch Road, Bournemouth, and the matter is brought before the Licensing Subcommittee for determination. So I will ask each member now to introduce themselves with regard to this morning's hearing and state their role, and if council members could please advise us of their ward. I will start, and my name is Councillor Jude Butt. I'm chairman of the Licensing Committee, and I'm chairman of this subcommittee for the purposes of today's business. And my ward is Creekmore, Hilborn and Waterloo. Councillor Kelsey.
Yeah, Councillor Kelsey, member for East Cliff and Springbourne ward and a member of this subcommittee for today's hearings.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kelsey. Councillor Farr.
Good morning, Councillor Farr, member for Kinston ward and member of this subcommittee this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, and grateful thanks to our reserve member, Councillor Toby Johnson. We always have a reserve member just in case one of the other subcommittees are incommoded and can't stay. So grateful thanks to you, Councillor Johnson. You're very welcome to stay and observe if you so wish, or get on with today's business. So thank you very much for attending. We're extremely grateful to you. Moving on to our officers, Sarah Rogers.
Yes, good morning. I'm Sarah Rogers, Senior Licensing Officer for BCP Council.
Thank you. And Mary Almeida.
Good morning, I'm Mary Almeida and I'm the legal advisor to the subcommittee today.
Thank you. And Michelle Cutler.
Good morning. I'm Michelle Cutler and I'm the clerk to the Licensing Subcommittee today. Thank you.
And we also have Louise Smith, who is observing today. Louise, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Louise Smith from Democratic Services and I'm observing today's hearing.
You're very welcome to be here. Moving on then for the applicant, Mr. Byron Sims.
Good morning, committee. Good morning, ma'am. That's my name is Byron Sims, as you said, and Krzysztof Chabowski, who's the director of my client.
Thank you very much. And we don't have Karl Bryanski yet.
Karl Bryanski, yes.
No, okay. We have nobody appearing for the objectors. We did have a representative, Mr. Payne, but he has withdrawn and none of the objectors are here. And also an objector who had put in a submission, Mr. Basker Reddy Samanol, has withdrawn his submission, so he is not here either. So to confirm, all persons who've given their intention to speak have been identified, and anybody who wants to withdraw their representation or wishes not to speak, please raise your hand now. Okay, thank you. I will take that. So just to go through now the proposed procedure and order of speaking, and it's fairly simple. The licensing officer will present her report. The applicant will make their application, and there'll be questions of the applicant by all party, and members of the subcommittee will take that first. There are no responsible authorities, and regrettably there are no other persons today, but they would then make their representation. So we shall, as the subcommittee, do our best on their behalf at that juncture. There will be questions of the objectors, and members of the subcommittee will go first. We will try and raise those questions as if they were present. All parties will then be given an opportunity to sum up, and with the party who spoke last to go first. We'll then conclude our hearing, and the subcommittee will deliberate in private with the legal advisor and our clerk present. A notification of the subcommittee decision will be given with a period of 5 working days, beginning with the day on the last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, and that is today, 5 working days from today. And the notification decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. So I'd just like to ask if everybody is content with those proposed procedure. So I will ask in turn. Mr. Sims, are you content?
I'm content.
And your client, is your client content, or the gentleman who's sitting next to you?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Rogers?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mrs. Almeida?
Yes, thank you.
And who else have we got present? We have, I think that's it, is it? Yes, I think we've raised everybody, have we not? Yes, okay. A short list today. There's usually many more people, but we don't have any objectors. So finally, may I remind all parties speaking not to repeat the information which they've already given in writing. We know that, we've read it, we've understood it, but to expand on their written representations. And please, all questions asked through the chairman and no cross-examinations of parties. So if we're all content, I'll ask our licensing officer, Mrs. Rogers, if she kindly present her report. Thank you, Mrs. Rogers.
Thank you. This application is made by It Limited for a premises licence to permit off sales of alcohol between the hours of 8 AM and 11 PM each day of the week. As a result of the consultation, 7 representations were received under the grounds that to grant the application would undermine the prevention of crime and disorder, prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm licensing objectives. 6 of the representations were made under one submission via LSL solicitors, and the other one was made independently. Mediation was undertaken by the applicant via their solicitor to all other persons, and as a result, the one independent representation has been withdrawn. This leaves only the 6 contained in the submission from LSL solicitors. It should be noted, prior to submission of my report, a further independent representation was also successfully mediated and subsequently withdrawn. Copies of mediation email threads between the 2 legal representatives have been circulated prior to this hearing, showing the correspondence between them also for your consideration. No representations were received from any of the responsible authorities. Should the application be granted and the applicants fail to operate in accordance with their licence or any of the conditions attached to it, they will be aware that any of the responsible authorities or any other person may request a review of the licence at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. Are there any questions for Mrs. Rogers on points of fact? Councillor Kelsey?
Not at this time, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Farr.
Sorry, no, none from me at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could keep, yes, if you can keep, are you having trouble keeping your video on, Councillor Farr? Is everything
It's just
well?
that I have to raise the camera, raise it up, but yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I have a question, Mrs. Rogers. In the email we received yesterday from our clerk, Mrs. Cutler, we had the email which is from Mr. Sims iterating that he's content with the conditions as proposed and not content to accept further conditions as put forward by the objectors, then solicitor Mr. Payne. And then we have requested operating schedule. What is that? Who is that from? Is that from Mr. Sims or Mr. Payne? Because it's a little bit confusing, because it more or less in its entirety encapsulates the actual conditions which are on the operating schedule. So who did that come from? Thank you.
I think they came from Mr. Sims, but it's unclear whether they are amended from what was originally there or as part of the mediation.
Okay, we've got some.
But we just need some clarity on that.
Yeah, I don't think it did come from Mr. Sims. So I think it was a requested operation schedule. Then Mr. Payne had sent to Mr. Sims. I'm seeing nods. That's fine. We'll look into that in further detail, but just to know where that came from, okay? Because it's actually those great similarities between the actual offered conditions in any event. Thank you. Mr. Sims, do you have any questions for our licensing officer, Mrs. Rogers?
No, ma'am.
No? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Rogers. So then moving on to our applicants, Mr. Sims, you have the floor for your submission. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I won't take too long, I hope. I don't want to go over anything that's been in our written submissions. It's quite simply, this is a case in which the director of my client, Mr. Jabowski, has a lot of experience, around about 15 years experience working in off licenses and small supermarkets, convenience stores and that sort of thing in England, in various locations. This application, initially we went through an informal consultation during which the police requested that further conditions were added to our application, which we were happy to do and did. As such, no representations, as you've mentioned, were received from any of the responsible authorities. Again, all the other representations were withdrawn apart from those presented by LSL solicitors. And on this point, we have mentioned this, but it does appear to be, to a large extent, commercially motivated. Mr. Simierski, who is one of the clients of LSL solicitors, is Mr. Jabowski's ex-business partner. Before making this application, Mr. Jabowski told me he was, well, believed it would be likely that Mr. Simierski would organise a petition and object to this licence application. It seems to have come about exactly as predicted. Mr. Simierski runs 2 other off licenses and stores in the Boscombe area. There's been an application as well.
Mr. Sims, just to remind you that obviously fiscal matters of detriment or benefit with regard to business is not a matter for the licensing committee. So absolutely, we'll take that as stated, but it won't add any weight to any decision that we might make. Okay, continue.
The only other point I was going to raise in that respect is that there was the other application, which has just been the late night store, which was mediated. None of the representations that were made about my client's application were made about this other store, which has much longer opening hours and much greater potential for exacerbating problems of street drinking, for example, than my client's application. And the committee can make what they will of that, essentially.
Yes, just to be clear again, we must, we all understand we must take each application on its merits. And so thank you for raising that point. But again, we will set that aside with regard to any decision we might make. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you, ma'am.
OK, thank you very much. Members, questions of Mr. Sims. Councillor Kelsey.
I don't really have many questions as such, Chairman. It was good to see that before they came to us for an application, they actually did go to Dorset Police first, which in my opinion is exactly the right thing to do. Go through them first, make sure they've got any concerns and get the conditions done. The only condition that may just need tweaking slightly, in my opinion, would be the one regarding the CCTV. But I did read somewhere about you would be increasing that and doing that in line with Dorset Police. Would that be correct, Mr. Sims?
It wasn't actually Dorset Police who requested that, it was LSL solicitors, but we'd be happy to include a provision to say that...
There is indeed under location of CCTV,
Yeah.
which is premises license application. It says the applicant would be content to amend application to add to the first proposed conditional CCTV the words to cover all public parts of the premises and immediate external area. So Councillor Kelsey, thank you for pointing that out. I'm sure we'd be so very happy to accept that condition if the applicant was so happy to offer it.
Yes, we are. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
And
much.
no further questions from me at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kelsey. Councillor Farr?
Yes, I had a question which has arisen, which perhaps it might be more for licensing rather than Mr. Sims, but in the letter from LSL solicitors, it says about the blue notice wasn't there for the 28 days as required. I'll just pick that up. So could that be clarified?
Yes, that was a question that was raised, and the question was answered, and I felt it was answered appropriately, so I didn't feel it was necessary to raise it. There was some issue as to had it been let properly. We had the confirmation it had, so I think we can accept that, Councillor Farr, that
Okay,
we are indeed operating within required conditions. Okay.
Okay, brilliant.
Thank you for raising that. Always good to raise something. Okay. With regards to any further questions, I just had one with regard to the offer of the removal of bottles and emptying of bottles, etc., etc. The hours, I think, were 2300 to 6 a.m. That nothing would happen between those hours. Is that correct, Mr. Sims?
That's correct. In fact, I think it was 10 o'clock, 2200 hours.
23? I thought it was 23. If it's 22, that's fine.
Yeah. It is 23 till 6 a.m.
Is it 23 or 22?
23.
It's 23. I wondered whether it may be that your client would consider perhaps an hour earlier and an hour later, because obviously 2300 is quite late for those flats above, etc., etc. And I think 6 o'clock is a little bit early for, again, the flats above. So you might consider perhaps a little earlier in removing the bottles and a little later in starting in the morning, but I'll leave that as a matter for you. It might be something you consider and advise us later. Okay, thank you very much. So I don't have any further questions. I don't think the subcommittee members do either. Just looking, no. Okay, Mrs. Rogers, any questions?
No, none, thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we don't have any other persons with us, and unfortunately Mr. Payne isn't here either. So we don't have a presentation, but we do have the submission which was made by Mr. Payne, which was quite lengthy. I'm sure we've all read through it and will be able to raise questions from this, although I feel that the submission that was made by Mr. Sims seems to counteract an awful lot of it. So with that said, I will go straight to the questions from members with regards to the objectors. I'll start with you, Councillor Kelsey. Do you have any questions, or are you so content?
No, I'm actually very happy, Chairman. A lot of the questions that came in were the sort of questions that I would have expected to get from a competitor and from somebody else operating in the area. I think the majority of those questions have been answered quite substantially by the applicant within their own application. And also, I think we need to bear in mind that there have been no objections from the police, and the police have worked very closely with the applicant in making sure that they have the conditions that they feel are suitable for the area. I know the area very well. Boscombe's very close to my own ward, and it's an area I've been dealing with for years and years, and the applicant was quite right. There is no community impact zone in that area anymore. That was removed after we became BCP, and the police have never asked to have it reinstated. So I did find it strange that the objectors were bringing that back up and mentioning that in their applications. So I have no problems. I'm quite satisfied with what the applicants have offered to counteract any of the questions raised by the objectors. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kelsey. Councillor Farr.
Yes, likewise, I'm content with everything. Thank you.
Okay, I have one matter to raise. Mr. Sims, you may be able to assist. We often, with new licenses, when there are some tensions with objectors, that the licence holder does provide a telephone number which is displayed in the window. That seems reasonable, that if something is happening which is beyond the control of the residents, that they are able to phone that number and able to put forward their concerns at that particular time. So I believe that's reasonable. I know that subcommittee members have also supported that in the past. So it may be something that you would consider with regard to an offer of providing that, but I will leave the matter with you to discuss with your client. And I think, and the other one was asking what had been asked by the residents. Notices should be prominently displayed in the premises to the effect that alcohol shan't be sold or supplied before 8 AM. I just want to say I didn't feel that that was appropriate at all. So just to be clear on that, so that the objectors understand that the subcommittee, I'm seeing nodding heads, didn't feel that that was an appropriate ask. But I think that everything else in here, if you look at what you have offered within your conditions with regard to the police and fire, it is all covered. There's nothing new that the objectors have come up with. Obviously, TWAIT will always apply because it's that potential harm which we cannot as yet see. And of course, we have review open to us if it's so necessary. So I don't have any further questions other than that statement with regard perhaps to a telephone number being provided. So having said that, are there any questions, any further questions from the subcommittee members? No? Okay, thank you.
No, thank you, Chair.
And Mrs. Rogers, do you have any questions which Mr. Sims might be able to answer, or somebody might be able to answer with regard to the other person's objections?
No, I don't, thank you.
No, you don't. Okay, it's a hard one, isn't it? When there's nobody in the ether. Yes, okay, thank you very much. So thank you very much for that. So it's now an opportunity for all parties to sum up. Regrettably, we don't have Mr. Payne, so Mr. Sims, you have the floor.
Thank you, ma'am. I think you've all done a very good job of summing up for us. In fact, thank you very much. Quite simply, it is that situation. My client wanted to work with the community. We contacted the Dorset police, who said themselves they were involved with the antisocial behaviour teams they have in place, and everyone was happy with the conditions that were offered. The requested conditions that came in from LSL solicitors at the last minute yesterday were very similar, as you've all pointed out, to the condition we'd offered in the first place, and those others were not deemed necessary by the police or responsible authorities. So that's simply the reason why my client was unwilling to accept these conditions being posted at the last minute. My client would be very happy to work with the community. We've had a brief exchange now that there wouldn't be a problem with displaying a phone number for residents that have concerns. And the other point about the protection of public, prevention of public nuisance, my apologies, the condition that we had drafted said no collection of waste or recycling materials, including bottles, from the premises shall take place between 2200 hours and 0600 the following day. I think my client will be perfectly happy to change the morning time until 7 o'clock in the morning, if that's helpful.
Thank you. And the last point, which Councillor Kelsey kindly reminded of, was with the CCTV offer in the public realm. Are you so content? Yes. Okay. So absolutely. 3 offered conditions. That's extremely kind of you. Anything else to add?
No, thank you, ma'am.
No. Okay. Thank you very much. And Mrs. Rogers, you always have the last word. Anything you'd like to say in summary?
Only just at the end there, you said 3 offered conditions. I only got the 2. I got about the bottle collection, the CCTV. What was the third?
And the telephone number visibly displayed. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, members and applicants. So I'll now conclude our hearing. And at the end of this meeting, the subcommittee will adjourn in private with the legal advisor and our clerk to deliberate. A notification of subcommittee's decision will be provided within a period of 5 working days, beginning with the day on the last day in which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, which is today. And that is Wednesday, the 3rd of August. And the notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. Is it the 3rd or the 2nd? It is the 3rd, yes, about the right of appeal. So I'll ask our legal advisor now to explain that right of appeal. Thank you, Mrs. Almeida.
Thank you, Chair. If members decide to refuse the application or attach conditions to the licence which the applicant does not agree to, the applicant may appeal to the Magistrates' Court within a period of 21 days, beginning with the day that the applicant is notified in writing of the decision. Any other person who has made a valid representation may also appeal to the Magistrates' Court within a 21-day period if aggrieved by the decision made.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Almeida. Thank you very much, Mr. Sims. And I did write down your Mr. Jaboski. Did I get that right? Yes, I did make a good attempt, I think. Thank you very much for attending today, and to our officers and to our subcommittee members. So we'll now adjourn to make our decision. So if everybody would like to leave, thank you very much. Thank you and good morning to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you. Bye.
And live stream
I'm
on,
ending
yes,
the live stream now, Chair.